So here we are at the end of lesson 1 in chapter 3, and you guys should have solved this last problem here to number 25 from the last video. So all you had to do was change each of the mixed numbers first into an improper fraction, and then multiply the first fraction by the reciprocal, getting 117 over 85, and then changing it into a mixed number. And remember to simplify if you can. And then moving on to multiplying decimals. So page 78 shows you that you can multiply tenths with a number line. So if I had 4 tenths times 3, like they show you in the learn section, I would just take a jump of 4 tenths and do that 3 times. And get that that's 4 tenths plus 4 tenths plus 4 tenths, which would end up at 1 and 2 tenths. And then I could do the same thing with hundredths. So if I had 40 hundredths times 3, and this was 0, this would be 40 hundredths. And then 80 hundredths. And then 1 and 20 hundredths, because I'm jumping by 40 hundredths each time. Okay, we can do this without our number line as well. So I can multiply tenths by tenths. So if you turn to page 81, that is where the learn section is for this. And there's several different formats for that. We're going to practice with number 10 on page 82. So it says find 9 tenths by 8 tenths. Okay, and when we multiply this, I have 1 decimal place here and 1 decimal place here. So my answer should have 2 decimal places. So 9 times 8 is 72, and then I move my decimal place 2 in. I can also think of this as 9 times 8, which is 72, and then put back on and multiply times a tenth, and multiply it times another tenth, which would be really times 100th, which would give me 72 hundredths. So my answer would be 0 and 72 hundredths. Okay. And then multiplying decimals by decimals with 1 decimal place. The learn section on this is on pages 82 and 83. We're going to do number 12 that's on page 83. It says to multiply 4 and 3 tenths times 5 and 7 tenths in vertical form. So I have to write it vertically like this. And then again, I have 1 decimal place here, 1 decimal place here. So my answer should have 2 decimal places. I just add those together. So 3 times 7 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28 plus 2 is 30. And then I move to my ones place. So 5 ones times 3 tenths is 15. 5 times 4 is 20 plus the 1 is 21. And then I add, I get 1, 5, 4, and 2. And then remember I have my 2 decimal places, 1 for this one and 1 for here. So my answer is 24 and 51 hundredths. Okay, and then the learn section on page 84 just says to multiply decimals with 1 or more decimal places, which is essentially the same process as this. So you could practice with number 14 on the guided practice, which is 43 hundredths times 1 and 5 tenths. Okay, I don't have to use this 0, otherwise I would write I could write that on the other one and flip them, but this one has more digits, so that's why I write it on the top, even though it's less. So again, I have 2 decimal places here and 1 in this one, so my answer should have 3 decimal places. So you can finish solving that one for practice if you need. The answer that you should get to should be 645 thousandths. Okay, then we're going to go into dividing decimals. This is on page 87 for the Learn section. Okay, we're going to do number 2, since we're reviewing only, which would be 48 divided by 3/10. Okay, you can either make this into a fraction and do 48 divided by 3/10, which would be 48 times 10 over 3. So you'd have 480 divided by 3, which is 160. Or we've practiced also that you can divide it with long division like this. I just need to multiply both numbers by 10. So it would really be 480 divided by 3, which is the same problem as 48 divided by 3/10. And you'd end up with 160 because 3 goes into 4 one time with 1 remaining. And 3 goes into 18 6 times with none remaining. And 3 goes into 0 times. Okay. Then on page 88, you have divide a whole number by hundredths. So this would be a similar process. So if you took number 4 on the Learn section on page 89, you have 75 divided by 15 hundredths, which again you can change into a fraction if you prefer, which would be 15 hundredths. I just take away the 0. This is the hundredths place. And then that would be 75 times, because I'm dividing by a fraction then, 100 over 15. And again, I could simplify ahead of time, or I can simplify at the end. And it would be 500, or you can do the long division method. I would have to multiply both by 100 to get rid of the decimal here. So I end up with 7,500 divided by 15, which is the same as this, just different formats. Okay. And we divide tenths by tenths is the same process as dividing hundredths by hundredths. So we're going to skip forward to here and do guided practice number 7, which is on page 91. So this one says to divide 72 hundredths by 3 hundredths. So again, I can change both of these into fractions. So that would be 72 hundredths divided by 3 hundredths. And then to divide the fraction, just like we did and reviewed before, it would be 72 hundredths times the reciprocal of 100 over 3. This one's super simple to cross simplify. Just remember to simplify within this. One has to be the numerator, one has to be the denominator. So I end up with 72 over 3, which is the same as 72 divided by 3, which is 24. Or if I did this with long division, my goal is just to get rid of the decimal and the divisor. So I just need to multiply by 100. So I end up with 72 divided by 3. Okay. And then I can divide hundredths by tenths. Same process. So if I did number 8 for the guided practice on page 92, we're just going to skip to the long division on this one. So the fraction process is the same. If you prefer that method, that's fine. So on this one, remember you only have to get rid of the divisor fraction. So I would just multiply both of these by 10. So I would have 7 8/10 divided by 6. If you need to rewrite it, you can, if it helps you. So I would put 6 goes into 7 one time. And then 6 goes into 1 8/10 3/10 of a time, technically. You can think of it as 6 goes into 18 3 times. And I would have nothing remaining. So 1 3/10 times 6 should be 7 8/10. You can check it on your calculator if you want. So the answer should be 1 3/10. Okay. And then finally we have lesson 3.4. This is where you're applying everything that you learned from this chapter into word problems. So you can go through and do some of these word problems for practice. Remember, if they seem difficult, then those are the ones that you should probably pay attention to. You can certainly go through the odd numbered problems and see if you get them right. And if you don't, correct them, number 1. Number 2, you could do the even numbered problems that are similar to them. So skipping forward to your chapter review, you're going to do none from each section that you marked with a check. 1 from each section on the chapter review you marked with an S, and 2 from each section you marked with an E. But remember, if you miss these questions that you've done, you should probably go back and do more. Okay? And then in the chapter review, there's always the problem-solving sections as well, and those are not something that you should ignore. So make sure if you read them and look at them and they seem difficult, those are precisely the problems that you would want to do to study for your final. Don't forget to look at your final study guide.